The Cat's Whiskers podcast is proudly sponsored by the Bunkers Hill Hockley. Don't miss Panthers game day offers, including Coors Light at £2.50 a pint.
Hello, my name is Aaron Lord. The date is January the 24th, and this is the AskTCW podcast, and we're live. Yes, hello there, and thank you very much for joining us for this week's AskTCW podcast. As I say, my name is Aaron, and tonight I'm delighted to say that joining me to answer your questions is Tina.
Hiya!
Ant.
Evening.
Andy.
Hello.
And finally, it is Jono.
Hello, I've got a 2.5-year-old attempting to go to sleep on my chest, so this could be good fun.
So if you do hear any snoring, folks, then Jono tells us that it is Lucy, not Jono. So we'll see how that one plays out. But maybe Lucy might be able to answer some of the questions because she'll probably do a better job than some people. Who knows? Not naming any names, obviously. Just a joke. Moving on, some meaty questions to start the podcast, folks, and we'll get straight stuck into it. This one comes from the Player of the Week comments, and this person says, do we have the wrong captain? Personally, I think yes. Jeff Brown would have been a better choice, and they want your thoughts, folks. So, Andy, I'll come to you first on that one.
I think it's a very subjective topic that sort of gets brought up probably twice a season, maybe. It's a difficult one because as fans, you kind of want that all-action sort of play. You know, you think of your Jordan Foxes, you think of Adam Keefe when he was playing. You think of those type of players that they're gritty, they're grafters, they score goals, they throw hits, they will fight from time to time. And as fans, that's kind of what you like to see because they're the sort of, putting the bodies on the line type of players and they're grafters ultimately. And I kind of see why Jeff Brown sort of fits that mould for us. That being said, I don't necessarily. I think one of the other things that we don't see as fans is obviously what goes on behind closed doors and what gets said. And I think there's no surprise really. I don't think that a lot of the captains around the league are Brits, established British players. Not all the captains by any stretch, but certainly a fair few teams have got established British players as captains. And I think knowing the league, I think knowing the referees, I think things like that help in that sense. And is probably one of the reasons why we see it quite so often. I personally don't have a problem with Steve Lee as captain. I think he's done a relatively good job. And to be fair, he plays the game. He's certainly lost that physical side that he had, but he certainly plays, with 100%. And you've only got to look at the game against Cardiff and some of the power plays that Cardiff had. He's constantly putting his body on the line and blocking shots and things like that. And it's things like that does set an example to other players. So ultimately, like I say, as fans, you kind of want that all-action sort of go-to guy who perhaps can grab the game by the scruff of the neck and turn it on its head from occasion, but ultimately will graft and always deliver 100% every shift and stuff. But it's one of them things. I think there's a lot more that goes on sort of off ice and with refereeing and the players and things like that perhaps we're not overly au fait with. We just see player X being an awful lot more gritty or a lot more in your face, and we sort of automatically think, well, that's the type of player we like and we want, so therefore he should be setting that example. So I think it's a tough one. Like I say, I don't have a problem with Lee as captain, but I do appreciate that some fans want, like I say, that sort of all singing all dancing player.
Okie dokie. And I'll come to you next. Do you quite simply, the person asks, do we have the wrong captain? Where do you sit on that question?
If you look at the roster that we've got, who else is it going to be? Andy's covered the vast majority of all the points. He's covered it all very well. I think the last time we had an import captain, it was Jordan Fox, and he was in his second season with us, so it's not like he was a newbie. I don't see who else it could be on this roster, if I'm perfectly honest.
So do you not agree with the person asking the question that Jeff Brown would he have even been a candidate for you?
I'd have had him as one of my alternates.
Which he is.
Which he is, yeah. So I don't think he's got that far wrong. But no, Lee is certainly experienced enough. He's not. I think when I think of a captain, my problem is I've obviously when it comes to hockey, I straight away think of Jordan Fox. When I think of football, I think of the likes of Brian Robson, Roy Keane, those sort of players that would do literally anything it took for the team to win. And I don't think we've got that sort of character on the roster anymore. So for me, Lee is perfectly fine, purely based on his experience alone.
Okie dokie. Well, obviously, Tina, Andy has mentioned a lot about captains and what people look for in a captain. Where do you kind of sit on regarding what do you want from a captain?
Sorry, was that to me?
Sorry, no, it's me. I just managed to lean on my mute button. Sorry, my apologies.
That's all right. We'll let you off.
I've got to have at least one technical problem during the podcast. That happens. For me, what I want in a captain is just somebody who can lead a team. And one thing that Jordan Fox joked about once or twice was that he delegated a lot of things to Clarke and Matthew Myers. So, in a sense, he was trying to brush off the fact that he actually did anything to captain the team at all, which was, quite ironic in a sense. I just want a captain who can lead the team. Now, earlier on in the season, myself and Anne went to the games night and we interviewed a few players. And one question I did ask a few of the players, and one of the players I spoke to was David Clarke. I did sort of ask a couple of players, "How's Stevie Lee doing as captain?" And anyone I spoke to, they seemed quite relaxed about it. It was Stevie's a good captain. He's been really good to it. Good to us for the newbies. And David Clarke was like, I haven't really needed to tell him anything. There's no pearls of wisdom I can pass down to him because he's bar having the letter on his jersey, he's been there and done that kind of thing. So, regardless of what we see. Based on the short snippets of conversations I had with players earlier on in the season, they all seem to think that they have the right man for the job.
And I suppose they're the people that count really at the end of the day, aren't they? Not as fans, but I suppose that will be a question that maybe we get asked next season on the AskTCW podcast. But we will move on. But thank you very much for answering that question. Another question coming from the Player of the Week comments. And this person says, why do we still have Rick Stratton, who is only here on match nights? A new assistant may inject new life into the team. But that said, a much improved performance all round this weekend. It has to now be sustained week in, week out, which obviously, if you listened to the TCW review podcast earlier on in the week, you will notice that that's what everybody said on it. But, Jono, I'll come to you. Rick Stratton. Cory Nielsen's number 2 for most of the years that he's been here, a major figure in and a major part in all the victories that we've won trophy-wise, etc. But over the last few years, his role has kind of it's been watered down, if you'd like. But do you think he's still an important part of the sort of coaching team?
Yeah, massively. He doesn't go. He doesn't do training anymore, I believe. He's only there for match nights. But
you've got to look at the experience he's had, not only with the Panthers, but all that experience he had with Hull, experience he had with Great Britain. You cannot buy that sort of experience of the game at this level in this country. And he's on the bench every single game, home or away. Yeah, absolutely. He brings a lot to it. A lot of the success, he's been part of that we've had. He knows the players. He knows the team. Yeah, absolutely. You have him on the bench. I don't have a problem with it. Maybe he's got other commitments, which means he can't do training anymore. I believe David Clarke has a much more input into the training, along with Cory Nielsen. But I think having someone like Rick Stratton to help on the bench on game nights, great experience, and I've got no problem with him being there whatsoever.
I mean, Tino, I'll come back to you on this one. Like Jono just says, David Clarke, we've just mentioned about Steve Lee being a captain. There was a reason that Steve Lee became our captain, and that was because David Clarke became an assistant coach. So, as Jono says, he's obviously got more involvement in the coaching, which means that, Rick Stratton, like Jono says, he might have other priorities during the week, etc. But he's still an important part of the Panthers currently, isn't he, really?
I would say so. I mean, if nothing else, he can pass on, I sort of talked about David Clarke passing on his pearls of wisdom to Stevie Lee, which he said he didn't need to. But, Rick Stratton can pass on his pearls of wisdom to David Clarke. He's a rookie assistant coach. At some point, he's probably going to be a rookie head coach, and he's going to benefit from the experience of those that he is working with. He's looking forward to the next stages of his career, whether he's going to continue to be a player assistant coach, or whether he's going to hang up the skates and go full-time coaching. That is going to happen at some point. You would imagine. So if nothing else, I would say Rick's experience is invaluable to David Clarke. It's about passing it on. It's about making sure that there are going to be people who come after you. So, you've got to. I mean, for me personally, and I know it's not quite the same thing, but I work better when I am doing. You can tell people, until you're blue in the face, but I think people learn a lot better when they're actually doing, and if they can do what they're doing with somebody who is experienced at it, then they get the benefit of not just the verbal experience and the instruction that they can gain, but they actually get to experience what that person is able to do and what that person knows. So I think that from that perspective, I have absolutely no problem with that, because if you think about it as well, there's a lot of people saying that David Clarke is probably being set up to be the next coach of the Nottingham Panthers, so he needs the experience that the two current coaches of the Nottingham Panthers can give him. And you can never have enough help when you are stepping up in your career at whatever stage that may be.
Very true. Andy, I'll come to you finally on this question. For every main coach, head coach, manager throughout sports, it doesn't just relate to ice hockey. There is always that person that's there next to them, that's helped them on that journey. And Rick Stratton really has been that man for us, hasn't he? And it's a lot of people kind of overlook that, don't they? Obviously, when we've won trophies, we've won playoff trophies, even sort of Challenge Cup trophies, the chant around the arena has been Cory Nielsen. But you really can't you can't ever forget the job that Rick Stratton has done for us all over the years, have we? Can you really? Sorry.
No, not at all. He's done a great job, and he's a part of the furniture as much as every other mainstay in the team is at the moment. And it is there's a fair amount that he's done, but he's done very well, and he's worked wonders at times. What I will say with regards to the question is, I don't have a problem with him sort of taking this not necessarily part-time role, but this sort of game time role on. Purely because obviously he helps running the bench, so he deals with the defensemen and gets them all sorted while Cory focuses on the forwards, and I think that's a system that works well. It's always handy to have an experienced person doing that who knows the job inside out. But what I will say is I wouldn't be adverse to having a full-time experienced number two. But that, like I say, ultimately with the state of where we are as a club with regards coaching and stuff, it's not going to happen. So with that in mind, I actually think we've probably got the perfect setup in the fact that we've got an established head coach, we've got an assistant coach who's learning the ropes, but then we've also got another assistant coach who helps out on match nights because, let's face it, on match nights, David Clarke's got something else on his mind as well as the coaching side of things, and that's trying to score goals. So it's, I think we've got a decent balance, but, to go back to your point, Aaron, absolutely, by no means should we ever forget the role that Rick Stratton's played in this team and in our history. It's like you say, it will always be the head coach that gets the recognition, but you've got to think there's an awful lot of people, backroom staff and trainers and physios and equipment people. There's an awful lot of people that are involved in a successful outfit, and obviously Rick Stratton is a big part of that.
Okie dokie. Well, thank you very much for that comment and question. And our final question coming from the Player of the Week comments. Ant, I'll come to you firstly on this one, so get those ears nice and open. Do we need an additional D-man with our defensive frailties when trying to run the clock down at the end of periods? So, Ant, we've literally just signed a new forward, but do you think we should be signing another D-man as well?
Back to a podcast about 2 or 3 weeks ago. It was that time when you just saw our defence sort of just get pushed off the puck so easily, and players crashing our net and scoring goals. And I said then, I want us to bring somebody in that will just not take any sugar, and will just clear the crease, and just protect the netminder. Yes, we've played better since then, but I'd still like that extra sort of physical aspect, if you like, at the back. Allow Gagnon that bit more freedom to, if he has to fight, then he can fight, but we can't just be relying on one person. If you think back to the much heralded Grand Slam team, trademark Elite League website, we had Beckett and Lepine, both of which were just no nonsense. They just stay at the back. You go anywhere near our goalie, you're going to know about it. You go into the corners, you're going to know about it. And I just wish we had another person like that at the back. So, yes, for me. A very long ramble, yes.
Okie dokie. I mean, Tina, two seasons ago, we signed 2 D-men at the end of, pretty much deadline day. Obviously, we went on to secure the Challenge Cup and the playoff trophy. But do you think we should really be looking in the market for another D-man?
Well, I mean, I think I'm a bit hesitant about it, and there's a couple of reasons. Because we have just signed this forward who we have been crying out for weeks and weeks and weeks ever since we released Shallot, and probably before that as well. And the interview that Cory did in the Evening Post with Matt Davis, he talks about the absolute the lack of players that are available at the minute. It's barren. It's just there's just nothing good out there. So I don't want a panic signing, and I completely understand what Anti's saying, and I can what's the word? I get it, basically. I get what he's saying. The other thing I would say about that is I have 2 words. Josh Tetlow. Josh Tetlow. I think that if we are experiencing defensive frailties where we've got tired bodies at the end of a night, I think it just speaks to the fact that if we can have Josh on our roster a little bit more often, maybe we can use him a little bit more often during a game, so as our key defensemen are not getting quite so overused, so they have some gas left in the tank to do the clearing bodies out of the crease, in the dying seconds of a game. We're not conceding, we're not having the opposition getting in the face of our netminder and it going unpunished. I think so far Tetlow has done very well in a Panthers jersey. You cannot help but notice him, and he's if he messes up, then everybody would notice. I mean, I think a lot of people notice when he is on the ice, because when he's had a shift, when he's had a good shift, you can hear, particularly at home, obviously, you can hear that the crowd appreciate it. So, so if we can't sign somebody else of decent quality, and I'm a bit. I know I'll get berated for this. I'm a little bit on the fence on the whole sort of, do we need another defensive signing? I know there's the dreaded phrase. But if we were to sign somebody and they were of decent quality, yeah, fine, no harm in it. We know how we can suffer if we lose players, get injuries, yada yada yada. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that, but I want it to be somebody of good quality, and if there isn't anybody of good quality, I'd like us to use Tetlow more, to give our our marquee defenseman, if you will, more energy towards the end of a game.
Okie dokie. When you said I've got 2 words for you, I wasn't expecting you to say Josh Tetlow, to be honest. I wasn't expecting you to say those words. Ooh. But I thought you might have mentioned Kyle Hardy or Joe Grimaldi.
Oh, dear.
They were the words that I thought you might have mentioned.
Well,
Andy, go on.
To be fair, sorry, yeah, to be fair, I mean, they're names that we can use as examples of what not to sign.
Yeah, exactly. But Andy, you kind of I'll come to you on this one. I'll let you have the final vote, really. Ant wants us to bring, or would like us to bring another D-man in. Tina, she's sitting on that dreaded cat's whiskers fence, but leaning towards the side of not really. Give Tetlow a go. Where are you sitting with Tina, or are you sitting with our very own Ant?
No, I don't see where we would bring someone in, or why we would bring in a defenseman in. I appreciate the argument for having spare imports. I don't think currently, I don't think it necessarily works. That doesn't mean to say that it shouldn't work, but I think ultimately my big thing with bringing in a defenseman is which defenseman then sits, because ultimately a defenseman will be sitting if we bring in another import defenseman. So which import defenseman sits and misses games? Because truth be told, I don't really think any of them deserve to be dropped in that sense. I think there's no one that certainly stands out as being particularly poor, and I don't think there's anyone that stands out as being particularly amazing. So I don't think it'd be fair to drop a defenseman just to bring in someone else. That being said, if someone else is exceptional, then you make that signing because they make your team better. But there was something that I don't know if we'll touch on Sheffield's news today or not, but quite interestingly, 2 days ago, Simsy tweeted saying, "You want to know how dry the well is? This signing shows you." And Ned Lukasevich has gone to Odense Bulldogs in Denmark. And then 2 days later, Sheffield have signed a bloke who's been in and out of a team this season, 3 times, is it now, that he's left and come back?
Yeah.
So it's, it does show you how to quote Sims's words, it does show you how dry the well is, in the sense that there's not a lot out there at this stage, because teams are making pushes for either league titles back in their domestic seasons, or playoff pushes in the other leagues. So it's tough, because obviously if you have the opportunity to make your team better, you should always take that. And I think realistically, there's not a coach on the earth that doesn't do that, or doesn't at least try to do that. But ultimately, I wouldn't make another defensive signing at all. I think realistically, if I had to bring in another import, it would be another import forward, because I think there's more import forwards that you can make a case for sitting than there are defensemen.
Okie dokie. Well, I'm afraid, Ant, you're in the field on your own. So there we go. But thank you very much for answering those questions. We will move now on to another question, and this one comes from Ray Hudson. Very good name, Ray. Does Nielsen now need to stick to one primary netminder for the remainder of the season for consistency purposes? Whilst we have 3 good netminders, I can't help but think it causes our D problems in having to readjust on a weekly, sometimes nightly basis to the different goaltending styles of Garnet and Galbraith. Do the panel feel this is an issue? Tina, I'll come to you first on this question.
Okay. Well, one thing I have noticed in terms of the Panthers fan base attitude towards our netminders is there's slightly less love for Mike Garnet than there is for Patrick Galbraith. You can't argue with stats. Oh, hello, Lucy.
We said she might answer the question.
Yeah. I think Jono's back.
She just said. Did she just say the moose? Is that what she said?
I really hope not. I thought Jono was bringing her up better than that. Anyway,
I taught her not to say things like that. No. She knows Daddy doesn't like the moose.
Lucy, you can have a moment in a minute. Just let Auntie Tina finish answering this question.
Bless her. She's going to run this podcast one day. It's going to be handed down through the generations.
Exactly.
Anyway,
some people probably wish that would happen now, to be honest.
well, they do whenever they know I'm in charge. Anyway, Patrick Galbraith, for whatever reason, has a better record than Garnet since he started. December was horrid for Garnet. However, that coincided obviously with Galbraith's injury, so he was playing more. I mean, I can see what Ray is saying, and I think the difficulty is if you have one netminder consistently, then the other 2 are going to suffer. I mean, the sort of asterisk to that is obviously that we were sort of loaning out Sam Gospel to NIHL teams, and what was it, 87 shots or something he faced against Hull playing for the Lions at the weekend. I mean, that's just an inhumane amount of shots for a goaltender to have to face. But so he's he's getting a bit of game time, but if you're not switching Garnet and Galbraith at least a little bit, then you're going to find that one of them's going to suffer. Whichever one is not getting the game time that he needs to stay sharp, he's going to suffer, and that's I think that's the problem that you have when you've got 3 netminders. It's a problem that we had last season, and last season it was Dan Green that suffered because he played like 10 minutes and then was expected to come in cold with virtually no game time in the playoff quarter-final second leg, and he was expected to hold that lead, and the very first shot he faced was a breakaway. So would another netminder have saved it? maybe they would have done. Another netminder who'd had more than half a game's worth of ice time probably would have saved it. And I think that's the danger with not rotating the netminders. You get somebody who is cold, and you get somebody who has to come in possibly at a crucial point at some game, down the line, and that can lose you the game because they're not sharp, they're not game ready, and they just haven't had the ice time to be able to compete and to be able to keep up with what's being thrown at them. So I think it's nice to see that Gospel is getting game time at an IHL teams. That's great, but if you don't switch up the other two, it's going to cause a problem. So consistency is nice, but this is what happens when you've got three netminders. You've got to make sure they're all getting game time.
Okie dokie. Jono, I'll come to you on this one. I mean, for me, I kind of feel that Cory's picks Galbraith for what you could maybe class as the bigger games. For example, he started the game at home against Cardiff, and then obviously Garnet played in Milton Keynes. But obviously with our new signing, Luke Pither, coming in, it does mean that he's going to have to choose, an important netminder basically, and Gospel will have to back up. But do you think he should, choose one of them and stick with them, or do you feel that what Tina was just talking about, rotation, is still the way to go for the remainder of the season?
I agree with what Tina said with regards keeping the netminders sharp, because we saw what happened last year with Dan Green when he had to come in cold, and we all know what happened, and I'm not going to go over it again. But
thank you.
I think it's clear that Galbraith is the number one. Galbraith is what would be classed as the starting netminder. He's performed better than Mike Garnet out of the two. And for that reason, he would be the starting netminder. However, I don't see any problem with Mike Garnet being a quality netminder that he is, starting games as well. So I would start Galbraith probably for 60 to 70% of the games, and then Mike Garnet for the rest.
Okie dokie. And I think your dear daughter is agreeing with you on that one. And I will just come to you finally on that one. Just with something that Jono's just said, Galbraith potentially, performing better than Mike Garnet. But then you've got to remember sort of the performances that Garnet put in the CHL earlier on in the season. I know that's a long time ago now. But do you feel, just quickly on Jono's kind of point, that Galbraith is now the number one? Or do you think it is very much a split between Galbraith and Garnet?
I thought Lucy said it perfectly, personally. Certainly better than I can. But yeah, I agree with Jono. I think Galbraith's now edged ahead as number one. But we are very lucky in that we've got two top-class import netminders and a very, very good British netminder as well. And I'm pleased that we're getting Gospel the game time. I know it's not in the Elite League, but at least he's seeing, match action and what have you. That can only benefit us down the line.
Okie dokie. Well, thank you very much for all your answers on that one. We will move on now to another question, and moving away from the Panthers slightly. This one comes from Paul Lister, and Paul asks, is Liam Kirk good enough for the NHL? Obviously, this might be on the back of an article that was written about Liam Kirk potentially being in a draft at some stage for the NHL. So, Andy Haywood, do you think Liam Kirk is good enough for the NHL?
No, not at this moment. That being said, I think he's more than good enough for the draft, and I think he's more than good enough to get into training camp and make a damn good impression and have an NHL career. But at this moment in time, I think, as mentioned in the article, I think he's probably a little bit too small in sort of stature, not necessarily in size, but in muscle and build. I think that he's got an undoubted level of skill for his age, but he would need to test it against NHL grown established adults, and he's he's proven his worth in this league against grown men and players that have been around the game for an awful long time. I imagine in some cases players that have probably played the game longer than he's been alive. So he's acquitted himself exceptionally well, and I do think he's got the ability to go far and make it. But I don't think we'll get the sort of the dream scenario of he's drafted this year and then next season we're seeing him in the NHL. I think it will be a longer process than that. I think it will be a case of if he is drafted this year, I think he'll get drafted. He will go to training camp naturally because they will want to have a good look at him. But I think he will be in either sent back to Europe or sent to the AHL team or an ECHL team to get proper game time in higher leagues than what we can offer. And they'll see what he can do in those type of leagues and those type of situations. And obviously, 2 years, a year, 2 years down the line, who's to say he doesn't get that call up? He has got a fantastic opportunity and a really good chance to make it into the top league. But I don't think he's got enough at this moment in time to force his way into the NHL sort of immediately. If and when he gets drafted.
Jono, I'll come back to you on this one. Obviously, your dear wife is a Sheffield Steelers fan, so I know she probably talks about Liam Kirk on a regular basis. You would have seen him with some of. I'm guessing you would have seen him with some of the GB work that you've done.
I've seen him a lot.
As well
over last summer and at the under-20s just recently. He is one of the most naturally gifted British players I've ever seen. He is a natural talent. He's a very, very good player. However, if he remains at the Sheffield Steelers or in the Elite League, he will not get drafted because he's playing fourth line minutes. He's not getting any special team time there. Now, that's not the Steelers' fault. It would be the same if he was at any other Elite League team because Elite League teams aren't built to develop players, unfortunately. They're built to win games. He needs to get away from the Elite League and either be somewhere like Sweden, like his compatriot Sam Duggan is, or maybe in America. I think he's talented enough to get drafted. I think one day he's probably talented enough to play in the NHL. He's got a natural gift. In the recent under-20s, and bearing in mind he's 17, a lot of the under-20 players are sort of 19 years old. He was head and shoulders the best player in the tournament. Now, that is only the fourth level of that particular under-20 tournament, but he was head and shoulders above the rest. He's been picked in the squad for the under-18 Great Britain tournament in April. And again, I expect him to be the best player in that tournament. So he needs to test himself. He's better than his peers. Whenever I've seen him in junior tournaments, when I saw him in the conference tournament last season, best player by a mile.
Just on, you mentioned the under-20 tournaments, 5 games, 14 points, 7 goals, 7 assists. So that kind of backs up your statement that he was the best player in that competition, really.
Oh, but by a mile. And Great Britain finished third, don't forget. But he was easily the best player on that. He pulled Great Britain up by the bootstraps. And he had support from Sam Duggan, he had support from Cole Shudra, but he was the man. He was the one you knew if anything was going to happen, he would make it happen. He would score that important goal. He would make that important play. Like I say, he is an absolute natural talent. And I think he has the ability, certainly to be drafted and maybe down the line play in the NHL a little bit later on. The thing is, he's not going to be noticed that much. From the Hockey Writers article that was written, it's like he's on a list where it's like maybe he should be had a look at by some scouts, but I think he's good enough to be drafted, and eventually he'll be good enough to make the NHL, but not if he remains in the Elite League.
Okie dokie. Well, I suppose we will leave that one there, as Jono's given us some very good facts and some good information about Liam Kirk, but obviously it's very interesting and positive to see a young Brit being talked about in that kind of stature. So we will see what Liam Kirk does over the next few seasons. But we will move on to another question, and we'll stay away from the Panthers in fact, I'm going to save that question for the last one, and you'll all know what I mean. And by you lot, I mean the people on the Cat's Whiskers, not the people that's listening. So we will we'll get back to the Panthers, should I say, and we will go to the Cage Forum, and this one is from Alex17. And Alex says, Cory has done an amazing job whilst he's been here, and he will never be forgotten. I know his contract is up after this season, but I think if we win the playoffs or Challenge Cup and playoffs, he will most likely be back. Opinions on this, please? So another meaty question. We've had one about the captain, this one now about the coach. Oh, who shall I go to first? Ant. I've spun the wheel of question answering, and it has fallen on your name.
What do I win?
Nothing.
The right to answer the question.
Exactly.
So you lot can disagree with me again.
I tell you what you do win. Yeah, you win the chance for somebody to disagree with what you're about to say.
Okay. Yes, Cory has done a fantastic job, and yes, he should be rightly be remembered. Things haven't been great the last couple of years, but staying that, we still won the Continental Cup last year. We've still got a chance, albeit a very, very outside chance at the league. I personally think it's gone. We've still got a chance at 2 more cup trophies, which would be another fantastic end to the season. I think whether Cory stays or not will be down to him. And I know there's going to be several people that are massively upset by that, but I think with his trophy record, the fact that obviously he brought that league trophy to us, which I know was a long time ago now, but we have constantly competed and we've constantly won things while he's been in charge, and we have seen some fantastic hockey being played. So yeah, I think it'll be down to him.
Okie dokie. Tina, kind of your opinions, and I'll put obviously another slant on it as well. Your opinions first, but then do you kind of agree with the question that if we do get a cup double with the playoffs and the Challenge Cup, that probably means that Cory might be back again next season?
Well, yes. I mean, yeah. To answer that, I don't see any reason why he wouldn't be offered the job. The fans hold the league title in the highest regard, over any other trophy, ever. We could have won the CHL trophy, and I suspect that there would be some Panthers fans that would still say, "But we didn't win the league." So, but you can't change people's mindsets. That's how it is. But the organisation recognises that trophies are a success. So if you come out of the end of a league and playoff and cup season and what have you, what have you, there's it's still a trophy. It's a success as far as the organisation is concerned. I tweeted just after we released Josh Schaller that it's not something that we do. We don't release players, and I don't think we let coaches go if they're winning. We don't. Yeah, I mean, we didn't let Cory Nielsen go when we came out with nothing more than the conference trophy, which is less than the trophy as far as I'm concerned. But hey ho. But the coaching staff still came back that season. So if we were ever going to let Cory Nielsen go, I imagine that would have been it. So if he comes out at the end of this season with 1 or 2 of the domestic trophies that are up for grabs, what reason do the organisation have to not re-sign him? I think as well, Cory Nielsen has been with us for so long. I think the headache of finding a new head coach, that would be an interesting scenario to watch unfold within the Panthers organisation. And, I'd like to think that if Cory Nielsen were to go, you imagine that at some point he is going to go. We haven't invented the Futurama jarred heads yet, so he's not going to be there in a pickled jar, just bellowing instructions, from his little table at the back of the bench. When Cory Nielsen does decide, or the Nottingham Panthers decide that Cory Nielsen is no longer the coach for the Nottingham Panthers, it's going to be interesting, and I just hope it's not one of those grass is greener on the other side situations. We know Cory Nielsen is capable of bringing us a league title, but there's a lot of the fan base that are losing or have lost patience with the follow up. So, but yeah, it's a difficult one. But while ever he's winning trophies, to sort of simplify and answer the question, I think that there's probably no reason to let him go somewhere else.
Okie dokie. Andy, I'll come to you on this question. Just with what Ant kind of said, it made me think. And do you agree with what Ant said in regards to that it will be Cory's decision on whether he wants to come back or whether he wants a fresh challenge, or do you kind of think the club will say at the end of this season whether they want him to continue or they don't, basically? Or do you think because he's been here so long, he's had so much success, that it'll just be a mutual kind of decision?
I think it's an interesting thought. I think if we win something and he goes, I think it's of his own accord, in the sense that I think there's the dream is to go out on a high, I suppose, isn't it, and not have to go out while you're still a hero before you have the chance to become the villain, sort of thing. And I think if we did win something and he left, I do think it'd be on his own terms. I do think, however, that if he does go and it's not necessarily on his terms, if it's a case of the club have said, we're going to go in a different direction, thank you very much for all your hard work and stuff, I do think because of his service, because of his record, I do think it's played out as, it's done in the off season, it's done early in the off season, so that there's a chance to recruit and get a coach in that can sign players and stuff. But I do think it's done in that sort of mutual sort of relationship, in the sense that he doesn't, no matter what you think of a bloke, he is the most successful coach in the elite league, not just Panthers, in the elite league, and he deserves an awful lot of respect for that from Panthers, and I think that because of that, I think that's where it comes in. Where I don't think it's a case of unless something is so drastically terrible, I don't think there's ever a case that he gets sacked midway through a season. And I think as well that, like I say, I think if he does go, that's not necessarily of his own accord, then I think it is done in a sort of mutual agreement. Sort of, we thank him for all his time, but he's we've decided to go down a different route. He's decided that he wants a new challenge, and it's played like that because I think it's the very least that the man deserves.
Okie dokie. Finally, Jono, I'm just going to come to you on this one. I was in the car today, and this was before this agenda came out, so I didn't know this question was going to be sort of asked. But I was thinking about all the, the forums, social media, and the real kind of some anger, some disappointment, a vary of kind of feelings regarding the league campaign this season. And it's looking that we're going to miss out on another league title. But under Cory, as Andy just says, the most successful coach in the Panthers organisation and, the Elite League as a whole. And I just thought, we're the only league really, mainstream league, basic, or in Europe, etc., or even further afield, that concentrate on the league, and the league being the number one, etc. Competitions, playoffs, etc. That's where people's is the main trophy. And I just thought, people talk about Cory and the fact that he's very good at short form kind of competitions, very good for getting up for one-off sort of games. So I was thinking that maybe he would like to go and challenge himself in another league, in another country where, dare I say it, people might be more appreciative of the skills that he can bring. And I think that sometimes is very quickly for people to just not even bring to the forefront. They just go, we've not won another league title, it's time for Cory to go, it's crap, it's not good enough, etc., without really understanding the skills that he has obviously brought to the Nottingham Panthers. So in a roundabout way, because I've gone on quite a bit there, but do you think he might actually just go, do you know what, I've done enough, I've done everything that I can, I want to go and test myself where my skills can grow and be of benefit to another team in another league in another country?
Can you repeat that? No. Right.
It was. I did say in a roundabout way. So I was on a long car journey today. If anybody knows, that's why I thought of all of that.
I tell you what. If Lucy's not listened to that, I said that would have sent her to sleep straight away, mate.
I know. Yeah, her eyes are going. Her eyes are going.
Our listeners have literally just gone down by half. So thank you for the last remaining listener.
Right. For a start, Cory Nielsen does not get anywhere near the respect he deserves from the wider fan base for what he's done for this club. I've been guilty of that in the past, and I think probably everyone on this panel has probably been guilty of that at some point in the past. But you only have to look at the trophy record. Now, I've alluded in the past in another podcast we did a couple of weeks ago, our league record sucks. It does suck. It's awful. But at the same time, there's still several clubs who would still kill to be in the position that we're in. We've won the most trophies in the Elite League era, the most silverware. Now, you also then look at the trophies, and I've seen something on various forums and social media where people basically rubbishing the Challenge Cup, rubbishing the playoffs. I'm sorry, you've got to give them trophies the respect that they deserve as well. It's not easy winning a trophy, and we've done it more than anyone. And I think people forget that at times. And yes, the league record is terrible. No getting away from that. But we've still had our sort of days in the sun where we won Challenge Cups and we won playoffs and we were the only British team to win the Continental Cup. So, it's been a successful 10 years. The thing I sometimes think about, similar to you, Aaron, when I'm on long car journeys, is... Does Cory Nielsen, is there anything left for him to do? Is there anything left for him to win? And I suppose the only thing you can say is the CHL. Well, we're never going to win that because we just haven't got the budget to compete with the top teams. That what we achieved this year is probably as far as we can go at the moment in that competition, and that exceeded all expectations. So I suppose the question for Cory is, is the challenge there for him? And like you say, is the challenge now for him to go elsewhere and pick up another club and do it all again with somebody else? That's only a question that Cory Nielsen can answer. I would be happy for him to come back as coach, and I can hear a load of people screaming at this podcast now I've said that. But who else do you get? Because quite frankly, I think half the people expect Scotty Bowman to come in. Scotty Bowman ain't going to come in. That's not going to happen. So, I'm quite happy for him to carry on as coach. If he wins 2 trophies this season, which are still there to be won, I would expect him to be offered a contract to continue as coach. Because let's face it, if we win 2 trophies and somebody else wins the league, that's only 2 teams that have won trophies this season, and we'll be one of them, and 10 will have won Jack. So there you go.
Well, after that comment, you have now lost our last remaining listener. But certainly an interesting question regarding Cory Nielsen, and we will obviously wait and see, because there is still plenty of time left in the season, and hey-ho, you never know, we might go on a 14-game unbeaten run. But thank you very much, everybody, for answering that question, because obviously it's not a very easy question to answer. But we will move on to another question, and this one comes from Elite League Champs. Obviously, that is at Kenwin64 on Twitter, a regular listener to us. So thank you, Kenwin, for sending your question. Now, I'll be honest, I have no idea what Kenwin is on about. So, and let's be honest, after my little ramble during the last question, it's better that I just ask the questions and shut up. But Kenwin says, please discuss elephant in the room. Surely one page of that thread is enough material for one show. Now, I believe, Jono, you can answer this question, so I'm going to shut up and let you speak again.
Again, yeah. This is the crazy thread on the Cage Forum about where people are saying that the league is all decided and it's all sorted out, and the reason we haven't blown everybody out the water and picked a team is because we're to keep everyone competitive, and it's decided who wins games, and it's oh my god. It's like if Panthers have missed a merchandising opportunity here, tinfoil hats with the Panthers logo on, because I'm sure they'd be like bought in bulk by the contributors to that thread. For anyone who doesn't know, I deleted my account on the Cage Forum a couple of weeks ago because, quite frankly, it's got ridiculous. I was getting sick of the same people saying the same things over and over again, not allowing any debate. I got sick of what we do being questioned by people who, frankly, do not have a clue what they are talking about. They have no idea what they're talking about, but basically saying that we've been bought by the club. Rubbish. Absolute rubbish. If people can't accept that our opinions are different from theirs, then tough, frankly. And I just got fed up, and I feel so sorry for the moderators on there having to read that bilge day after day after day. And I got to the point, with some advice from one other panel member on here tonight, just saying, just delete your account, because it's not worth it. And you know what? They're absolutely right. And I've been so much calmer since I deleted my account on there, and I don't think I'll ever go back on.
You just need to stop reading it now.
Well, yeah, but the thing is now because I can't respond, I can just accept it and laugh at it, and just laugh at how ludicrous it is, and it is ludicrous at times. And like I say, I feel sorry for the moderators, because it's not their fault that these posters go on and just spout this inane rubbish all the time. It's just pathetic. It was so good, and there used to be some really good debate, and there used to be a lot of people on there, and eventually people drifted away, people who could debate, and people just got fed up. They got fed up of the same people saying the same thing over and over again, and it's a real shame, because it used to be a really, really good forum, and now unfortunately it's been taken over by people who won't listen to anybody else, and it's just become a ludicrous joke. And that elephant in the room thread is a ludicrous joke, and frankly, it just says all that is to be said about the people who post on there, unfortunately, and it's really sad.
Okie dokie. Unless anybody's got anything else they want to say on that, I think we'll move on to the final couple of questions. We'll move on to then a couple of more questions, seeing that nobody said anything then. Kate Scott has obviously been on social media today, and Kate has noticed that Leeds United Football Club have changed their logo. If you haven't managed to see it, then I would head over It's going to be at the top of most of your searches, if I'm honest. Because let's be honest, it's not had a great reaction, even though they do say that they asked thousands and thousands of people. God knows who they asked.
I think a tax rise would get a better reaction than what that logo.
I have actually been told by one of my mates who's a Steeler fan, and unfortunately he's a Leeds fan as well. So why we're actually mates, I don't know. But no, they've gone back on it. They're not going ahead with that logo now, apparently.
Well, there you go. Hey, all that research. God. Anyway,
wow.
Kate says, basically, after seeing that logo, it got her thinking. Excuse me. Have any of the panel been fans of the Panthers when a logo change has happened? If so, what was your reaction and the reaction of the fan base as a whole? If not, how would you feel about it if the Panthers were to do it again now? Well, I'm going to guess that at least two of you haven't seen a Panthers logo change in Tina and Ant.
I have not.
I've seen paws change. Does that count?
No.
I think we've all seen the change in paws. I think that this is paws XL this year.
Yeah. Andy, Jono, have you seen a Panthers logo change?
I've seen one. I imagine Jono's seen two or
I've
three.
seen lots.
Okay, so Andy,
I've seen one, two, three, four. I think
four
together, 4 or 5.
Right.
Yeah.
Because Jono's talked for the last 10 minutes, we'll come to you first, Andy. And can you answer Kate's question? What was your reaction and the reaction of the fan base as a whole at that time? And tell us when it was. Give people a bit of an idea of when it was and what it changed from and to.
It changed in, I believe, the first year of the Elite League, so it would be 03-04, I think it was. 03-04. Now, the questions you've asked me, I'm probably not best placed to answer because I would have been 12, I think, at the time. And
a young whippersnapper.
Yeah, it would have only have been my sort of third season, I think it was, that season. So ultimately, I was still learning the game. I was still young and didn't really know what was going on, I suppose. Not a lot's changed. I'm just a bit older.
I was going to say, is that about ice hockey or life in general?
Yeah, just life in general. But I mean, it's one of them things. I don't know sort of previous side of it. I prefer the logo that we have now to what we had then. We also went the last season that we had the old logo, which was I believe, the much ill-fated Dare to Enter logo that lost the Dare to Enter bit because it turns out everyone dared to enter and everyone dared to beat us. That we also went for a spell where one season we changed I think it was on the home shirts, not both shirts, but on the home shirts we changed it to like a football rugby sort of style where the logo was like a small badge on the top sort of left breast sort of heart area rather than like a big crest in the middle. I'm pretty certain it was just on the yellow shirts, which were our home shirts that year, rather than both of them. And I think ultimately after that season, with the fact that the Elite League was brand new, I think it was probably a decent time to change the logo. I like I say, I'm not entirely sure what the sort of the general fan base reaction to it was. It was obviously before social media was big, and it was I don't know if I was frequenting the cage at that point. But on the whole, in my personal opinion, admittedly, I probably wasn't involved in the team as much as I probably am now, but I preferred the logo that we have now to what we did have. That being said, I'll now pass over to Jono, who will talk about the many logo changes that he's seen, and obviously the good old days and stuff. I did like that because we bought one. Did we bring one back for a jersey?
Yes, that was
the red one.
That was my favourite logo. So that was started in the 94-95 season. That logo has always been my favourite because before it was sort of the silhouette Black Panther. Prior to that, and then they sort of brought out this 3D Panther's head with the red background. It looked really, really good, and they had that for a few years. Then they had the Roaring Panther with the one claw coming out, which was really good, really like that. Then it was followed by when we came into the NIC and we had the Dare to Enter logo that you've already referred to, which everybody just went, that is awful. Because it was just like, what did it mean? Dare to enter? It's like, yeah, they did. They entered, they got 2 points and left. and it was promptly changed the next season. It just said Panthers and then established in 1946 underneath it, and then changed to the logo that we have now. I would love them to go back to the old sort of 94-95 logo, but they probably never will. I think the logo we've got now does its job. It's a Panther's head with claws. It's fine. If we ever have anything that's as bad as that Leeds United abomination that appeared earlier today, then, I'm sure there'll be lots of complaints. But hopefully we will never see anything as bad as that.
Well, you say that, but just ask Milton Keynes how they feel this season.
Well,
yeah,
that's funny you should mention that, because Coventry Blaze did it a few years ago, didn't they? They changed their logo, and then the MK, changed it this season, and they got quite a lot of stick. So, Tina, you've just mentioned that, so I'll come to you. How would you feel if we went on a radical kind of logo change, or do you think there's other things to worry about?
Well, I think it depends. I think there is there would be an opportunity because previous logo changes that have happened before the rise of social media. So you've not had the opportunity to sort of consult the people who are going to care about this the most, i.e. your fan base. Obviously, Leeds United missed that memo because apparently 99% of the fan base think it's dirge. So I think if the Panthers were to move to a change of logo, then they have the opportunity to let the fan base choose a logo. There is they can make several designs, or just come up with one and basically say, is this better than what we've got, and maybe put it to a vote. And I would like to think that they would have the sense to do that. Social media being what it is, and communication with the fans, being at its most prevalent, ever in the world, in history up to now. I don't think the club would be able to get away with it if they tried to make a change that was either A, terrible, or B, not consulted on or voted on by at least a large proportion of the fan base that have access to the internet. I would hate to think that they'd go ahead and do a change without asking anybody who cares about it. So I'm not completely closed to the idea. I do like the logo that we've got now. I think it's I think it's got a nice, not nice. Nice is the wrong word, but it's got a good look to it. So and it's the logo I've always known. So I'm used to it, but I don't have a strong emotional attachment to it. As long as if there was a potential replacement, if it was better.
I think what you've also got to think of as well is, Milton Keynes have changed their logo this season, but it's their inaugural season in the Elite League. It's almost like there's as much as I preferred the old Milton Keynes logo. You can kind of see why they've done it, in the sense that it's a rebrand. It's new. It's exciting. We're going into a brand new league. We're changing the way we look. We're changing the way we play. We're changing practically everything. I don't think we're in a position where it's necessarily needed. And I also think the other thing as well is that you have to be careful that you don't lose an identity. What you've got to think of is with a new logo comes new shirts that everyone has to buy. Now, that might be seen as a good thing or a bad thing for the club, I don't know. But by the same token, it's an awful lot.
With new logo comes great responsibility.
Well, what you've also got to think of, though, is it's an awful lot of expense for the club to completely rebrand. And, you know, I don't see the need for it in a scenario where there is no real change. Like I say, the year that we changed the logo from what I first knew was the first year of the Elite League. You know, like you say, Milton Keynes have changed their logo in their first season in the Elite League. It seems daft to just change it for the sake of changing it. So, you know, I'm all for keeping our identity as it is.
Okie dokie. We will move on to the final question now, because it's a good question. It's a juicy question. It's got everybody on the panel thinking, and that's dangerous. Anyway, so we will come to David Moyes' question. Not David Moyes. He's busy trying to save West Ham from relegation. But David Moy, he's a Manchester Storm fan, and he says, friendly Storm fan back again. If the panel had to choose their perfect 5 skaters plus netminder to start a match to represent the Elite League 17-18 season, the 6 to be selected from the current Elite League rosters, which 6 would they pick? So, Ant, I'll come to you first.
Okay. Now, I didn't really go for much balance, so I didn't go for like a setup man or anything like that. And this is purely based on the players that I have seen so far this season. So I've gone for Nasty Up from the Blaze in goal, which is probably a bit of a shocker. I've just thought in the couple of times I've seen him so far, he's been excellent. He's a very good goalie, and you know, highlights that I've seen of our games down there as well, he's played well. So I've stuck him in nets, because otherwise I could have just gone for a Panthers 5, and that'd be pretty boring and not very good. I've gone for Sauvé in D with Hotham from the Devils. I think Sauvé as a puck carrying defenseman is just top class. For me, he's one of the top D men in the league, and Hotham, I've always been impressed with him. And then up front, I've gone for Joey Martin and Guy Doucet, because all they do is score goals. And new to the fray this season, I've gone for Sebastian Silvestre from the Belfast Giants, because his points total just stands out more than anything else. And again, every time I've seen him this season, he just scored goals against us. So yeah, that's my 5. Not much physicality there. I could have quite easily gone Noble Nelson and what's his name, Gulikos, but then I probably would have jumped out the window and shot.
Yeah. The question wasn't which team can you put together that everybody would hate the most.
I'm sure some of us would have liked to have put that team together, though, wouldn't we, really? But so Ant's gone 1 Blaze, 2 Cardiff Devils, 1 Panthers, 1 Milton Keynes, and 1 Belfast Giants. So, Tina, I'll come to you next.
Mine doesn't have an awful lot of difference from Ant's, to be perfectly honest.
Ooh, okay.
But I have gone for a different netminder. You cannot argue with the stats, and Patrick Galbraith is top of the shop at the moment. So, yeah, he would be my goalie. That is the only Panthers player that features. I have also gone for Hotham in defence from the Devils, and stuck in for some serious points production from the back, Callie Ackerid from Guildford on defence. My 3 forwards, same as Ant. I've gone for Joey Martin, points, Silvestre, points, and also John Dunbar.
Right, okay. Just because you like the name, or
no, big points. Basically, it's all. Basically, my team is a team full of players who can either put the puck in the back of the net or help a teammate put the puck in the back of the net, and then you've got Hotham for somebody who can punch people every now and then.
So
he's a good D man. He's a good D man as well. But I just wanted a bit of somebody who could do the business, you know.
So Tina's gone for somebody that can do the business and points.
Yes.
Andy Haywood, I'll come to you next.
Well, it's I don't want to sound like a broken record.
Oh dear.
Have you lot like met up earlier today to discuss this, or did you have a Skype before you added me in?
I've got a couple of things in here that I know will not go down well.
Oh dear.
Hey, we're all saying.
However,
Andy, are some of them on the list?
One of them is, yeah.
Awesome.
However, I have got Hotham.
Yep.
I have got Cali Akared.
Yep. Okay.
I have got Joey Martin. And I have got Sebastian Sylvester, who so far I think has been the best player in the league. The two that are remaining, I've gone for Irvin's Mustakovs because, like Tina, I don't think...
Bye! Might be me going.
I don't think you can argue with that.
You got fired.
He's got a 92.3% save percentage, which is second best in the league behind Galbraith. He's got a 2.23 goals against average, which is first. You can't argue with the stats. It might be down to his defence, like people claim, but he's the best netminder in the league currently.
Come on. And Andy, what have you done?
I tell you the best part about this whole thing is that I know that Helen is sat right next to Jono listening to this rant. That's brilliant.
Like you say, you can't argue with stats and
As host of this podcast, I'm going to say, can we just all calm down a little bit?
Order in the court.
Yeah, let Andy finish what he's got to say because he's not going to be allowed on another podcast after this anyway. So go on, Andy, finish his thing about
my final forward is Levi Nelson.
Oh my God, what's he doing?
Well,
it's like he wants to quit. Jesus.
He's a player that everybody hates, so quite clearly he's doing his job properly. He's got a nasty habit against us of scoring big, important goals. And you need, in a team, you need players that can score big, important goals. And he's a rink rat. He's you could argue he's a cheat, but he scores big goals. And, on more than one occasion this season, he's made us look completely foolish. And, he is on my list of players that I actively despise. But there's a reason why I actively despise him, and that's because, annoyingly, he's actually very, very good.
Okay, David, I don't know why you had to ask this question. I really didn't.
How do you follow that?
Well, in one way, I'm quite glad that I've saved you to the end, Jono, after Andy's just, handed in his P45.
Wow. Yeah.
But so, as I've said, Tina went for somebody that can do their job in points, and Andy's gone for Steelers.
Levi Nelson. If you thought Mustakovs wasn't bad enough, he then goes to fix Levi Nelson.
I don't even know.
What is it? I bet that was playing in yellow.
Right, okay. Andy, thank you very much for everything that you've contributed to this podcast. Jono, finally, over to you. How do you follow that? Go on.
How do you follow that? In fact, I think I will shock a few people, actually.
No, don't you start.
Are we going to have to collectively fire you again?
Yeah. My netminder would be Patrick Galbraith, statistically the best netminder in the league.
After Mustakovs?
No, he's statistically the best netminder in the league. I have got to the Elite League website up now.
On what basis?
Save percentage.
Oh God, are we having this debate? This is a debate for another AskTCW podcast.
Plus
he's won. He started 13 games, won 10. So he's a big game netminder. So Patrick Galbraith in net, mate. I've also got Andrew Hotham because I think he's a superb defenseman. My other defenseman, and this could be the controversial one, would be Spiro Galakis.
Oh my God!
I nearly picked him.
What is wrong with you people?
Now Spiro Galakis.
I don't even know who you lot are anymore.
He's got 185 penalty minutes.
He's spending more time in the box than he will on the ice for that team.
When he actually plays on the ice, he's a very, very good defenseman, an exceptionally good defenseman, and he gets a lot of points. 38 points this season in 28 games. And let's face it, a lot of games he ain't completed, and a lot of games he's been banned for. So that's a phenomenal return from defence. Plus, he actually does the defensive job very, very well. He's an excellent player. Needs to cut out the checks to the head, obviously, but I would have him in because I think he just brings something. There's been too much emphasis on what he's actually got banned for, which he rightly so because he's done some stupid things. But when you actually look at how he plays, how good a defenseman he is, and what a good playmaker is, and what good goals he scores, I think he's a really, really good player, and I'd happily have him on the Panthers team. There, I've said it.
Oh wow!
Forwards.
Go on.
Yeah. Forwards, Silvestre, obvious choice. But I have actually gone for a centre, a right wing, and a left wing. So,
you've done it properly, have you?
I did, yeah. So Sebastian Silvestre would be my centre, top point scorer in the league currently. Very, very good player. My right wing would be Marc-Olivier Vallerand at Coventry. He's the top goal scorer in the Elite League with 24 goals. Also has 24 assists. He's been lauded in what has been a pretty average to poor Coventry side, it has to be said, but he's still putting up the points. He's a very, very good player, and he's looked impressive whenever I've seen him. And then my left winger, and it was a choice between three, but I think for the standard of opposition he's against, with the conferences, I went plump for Steve Saviano at Belfast, who has 14 goals and 22 assists, 36 points in 36 games. On the left wing, I looked at Watters of Guildford and Brett Ferguson of Guildford, who are both also good players, but I just felt that Saviano offers just that little bit more because of the standard of opposition from the conference system. So that would be my team.
Okay, thank you very much, Jono Bullard, future host of A View from the Bridge. With 3 Belfast Giants in his perfect team. Wowzers. I honestly don't know.
Can't argue without what good players they are. They are good players. They're second in the league for a reason, because they're a decent side.
Thank you very much, Davey. Folks, if you've been listening to this podcast, I don't know what to say, really. Thank you very much for... What?
Sure 6.
We haven't got time for that.
Which also known as he hasn't bothered looking.
Yeah, that's true. But thank you very much for staying with us. Wow, so there you have it. One of the people on this panel likes Mustakovs and Levi Nelson, and another person obviously is a big fan of the Belfast Giants this season. Hey ho, thank you very much for sending your questions. This has been the AskTCW podcast live. Join us next time. Thank you.
This edition of the Cat's Whiskers podcast was brought to you by the Bunkers Hill Hockley.